Hi, my name is John Messina, and welcome to another edition of Hey Coach. Today, our special guest is a good friend of mine, former Major League Baseball player and high school coach, Rob Murphy. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks, John. Good to be back.
Okay, and you have graduate of the University of Florida, but before that, I got to say, graduate of Columbus High School.
That's right,
My
your
big
arch nemesis.
Arch nemesis down in Miami. And how many Major League teams have you played for?
Oh, it ended up being 8 by
8
the
teams.
end. Things got scrambled up a bit pre and post strike of 1994-95. But my favorite spots were in Cincinnati and Boston.
Yeah, I always knew that. I know you're a big Red Sox fan. Before we get into the baseball part, there's something that you and I have been discussing the last few weeks. If anybody had watched HBO, they had a segment on the Real Sports show about heat dehydration and in football. And they were talking about how difficult it is for the southern states to run football practice. And now because of the hurricanes and the weathers, you're getting so many rainouts. So there has been, kind of like, and I'm not blaming anybody, but pressure on the coaches, the athletic directors, the principals, to play a certain amount of games in a short amount of time. And for me, I think that safety is kind of being overlooked a little bit. And again, this is the way the system is set up. So, you and I were talking about sort of a unique idea about maybe you could flip-flop seasons. And how would you like, or how would everybody like out there, you start the year with your indoor sports. Play volleyball and basketball. I know they're at the gym at the same time, but you can work that out. I know the college basketball coaches would love that. And then don't start football until maybe end of October, beginning of November, in the coolest time of the year, okay? And then when you get into February with the playoffs, most of your college coaches can come out to the games. They're not playing their own games on that.
You and I have discussed this more than a handful of times, and I think every time we've gone through it, the light seems to be getting brighter and brighter as far as this really makes sense. I know when you initially started talking about this, the matter of health and well-being of the athletes is primary. And with the heat, especially in Florida and in any place in the South in the summertime when football practice starts, coaches really need to mind what's happening there. And one accident is too much. And to really think outside the box and bring those indoor sports into the summer and let football play in the cooler months of the year in the southern part of the United States, I really think as we've carried on our conversation and gotten deeper into it, it seems like it's really something that needs to come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen the Real Sports segment, it is very, very revealing about how dangerous it is. And again, this is the way it's set up. I mean, we had some nice articles in newspapers up here about what can we do about the seasons now. Maybe get rid of your fall game. Maybe take a week off so you have 2 or 3 buys in there. And then I read an article from a writer down in South Florida, and he was kind of chastising the principals and the ADs for not letting the kids play 2 games in 1 week. I could see the pros if you told them, well, you got to play Monday and Friday. I don't think that's going to work,
That's tough. I mean, that's, from the baseball perspective with pitchers, having been a pitcher and coaching pitchers now, the rest and recovery in between their specific events is important. And we keep them on a tight schedule so that they're always prepared when it's their turn. And playing 2 or 3 football games within a matter of 9 or 10 days, that's a little much. There's not a lot of recovery there, and that's when injuries are going to have a much higher rate of occurrence.
Right, and you can't blame the coaches or anything. This is the system that's set up because they have to get all these games in. But if they had a few more bye weeks, extend the season, get rid of the fall game, which you really don't need because you play a game in the spring, that's a pretty good idea on that.
Oh, no doubt.
All right, we're getting into baseball. It's changed a lot, right?
Yes, it certainly has.
You and I have talked about this. If I can give you the high school perspective first, I mean, first time in my life I had kids talking to me about exit velocity and launch angle rather than your batting stance. And you know, I can't say what I said here to those young men. You know, let's worry about simple things first. But when we hosted the state baseball tournament at the Met Stadium from 2010 to 2014, first 2 years we had six classifications, which means we had 18 games. We had, I think it was 18 or 19 home runs combined in the tournament out of the Met Stadium. The next year they changed the bats.
Right.
They made the aluminum bats a little less velocity coming off it. We went to 8 teams, which meant it was 24 games. We had 2 home runs.
Right.
Okay? My point is, the home runs were getting less until these last few years, because what's the trend in Major League Baseball now?
Well, you either strike out or you hit a home run. That's all there's. And the major league teams want their leadoff hitters to hit home runs so that they can take advantage of every single slot in the lineup and not just give up an out, which is 3.7% of your lifeline in a 9-inning game, and not have run production.
So is that the advantage now, that they're putting their home run hitters 1 or 2?
Yes, that's been the trend. And the leadoff hitter in a lineup, it's got a stigma to it. You know, it's a certain type of, for decades, it's been a certain type of hitter, a certain type of player. And cleanup hitter, the same thing. You know, it's got that same stigma. When you put a traditional cleanup hitter in the leadoff spot, they are not going to be comfortable. And I don't think the results have been good. And that's why they've slid some of the guys back to the 2-hole, so that they're not the leadoff hitter, but they're still getting more opportunities in the 2 slot than the 4 or 5.
When we thought of the leadoff hitters, we think of the leadoff hitters, we think of somebody, I'm going way back now, Lou Brock, Maury Wills.
Yes.
Now we got Kyle Schwarber, okay, who doesn't look like a leadoff hitter. And, you know, I guess they know more than we do, and they do the analytics a lot more. But the trend is home runs or strikeouts. The amount of pitchers, Garrett Cole just struck out his 300 batter
I saw
this
that,
week,
yes.
okay? He's, I think they said, the 19th pitcher since the year 1900 that struck out 300 batters in a year. So the strikeouts are still there.
Right.
The pitching's still there. But the home runs, they said just about every team, with the exception of the Marlins, might break their single-season home run record. They have already hit, by Labor Day, more home runs in 1 year by Labor Day than they did ever before.
That's quite a change. That's
When you
big
were
difference.
playing, a lot different now, right?
It was definitely different. There wasn't, say, full-on analytics. You know, there were statistics and things that were being observed, but more the traditional things. I mean, you know, Bill James has been someone that has changed baseball statistics. And
Now explain to everybody out there who Bill James is.
Bill James, I mean, he was someone that enjoyed the numbers of baseball, and he tried to take it a little bit further. And with his, he had access to a personal computer, you know, way back when, and now, you know, I mean, he's been hired by teams to analyze and try to predict how their minor league players are going to progress and what type of players you draft. So there is full-on computerization in the scouting departments of all professional baseball teams.
Now, think of some of the managers you played for.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you played for Pete Rose.
Yeah, Pete Rose.
I'm sure if the analytic guy came down to Pete and says, Coach, this is who you're going to play today based on the stats. I would have loved to hear that conversation.
Pete was going to put his 9 guys in that lineup, and he
By
had guys
feelings.
by his gut,
by his
absolutely,
gut.
with his
There's no-
baseball instinct.
There's no such thing as a gut anymore, right?
Right.
There might be, but
Yeah.
not what we're talking about.
Yes.
But, I mean, I keep thinking of, you know, way back when I was growing up, Casey Stengel or Walter Alston or Earl Weaver. The analytic guy came down, the conversation wouldn't even have lasted a minute.
Exactly.
You know, but now, do you think a lot of the general managers are instructing the managers on the field on who to start?
I think that there's a list that comes down from one of the offices upstairs at these ballparks, and it gets handed to the manager and says, this is what the team's doing tonight. You know, with the change in personnel, going from 4 or 5 relief pitchers up to 7 or 8, what that has done is reduced the amount of pinch hitters that are available for a team. Used to be 5 or 6,
Right.
and now sometimes it's 3 or 4. So you can really only make so many moves now. So a manager's got to be really conservative. You can't go through all your players. You know, a team that even has 3 catchers, you know, the unwritten rule is you never use your last catcher.
Right.
You never put them in a game,
Right,
because if they get hurt, then you're in trouble. So there are only, I mean, there's less than a handful of real moves a manager can make offensively and defensively. So pitching routine of you know, what the bullpen is doing, that gets handled with kid gloves all the time, but there's only so much that they can do with the offensive side.
One of the things that you and I have talked about, especially this summer, I read a lot of old baseball books when I was getting my medical recovery this summer. And one of the ones are, look at the stats for Joe DiMaggio. I mean, the stats that he had, they couldn't fathom. Here's a guy that hit more home runs than he struck out every year that he played. I mean, you know, he'd hit 40 home runs, strike out 20 times, and he's playing every game.
Right.
It's something. And the other thing we talked about a lot is the ratio between home runs and RBIs. Somebody would hit 25 home runs years ago, he'd drive in 110 runs.
Right.
Now it's 25 home runs, you got 50 RBIs.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's a home run or nothing.
Yeah, and moving your number 4 hitter to the number 2 slot, the leadoff hitter is on or he's not. So the potential for that grand slam is lessened, because the first time up, you can only have one guy on, if that happens. And once you go through the lineup, what are the real odds of the 8, 9, and 1 being on base? You know, they're lower. They're definitely lower. So so your best home run hitter is not coming up with 2 or 3 guys on base as often, and that's sort of a fallout of putting that hitter in the number 2 spot.
Now, if I can break this down a little, simplify it, it's like when you were growing up, all right? The best kid, you bat first. You're the biggest kid, you bat first. Isn't that what we're coming out to?
Yeah, yeah.
But nobody cares about the strikeouts. That's, I know, as coaches for high school baseball for many years, you and I both say the worst thing you could do when you're at bat is to strike out in high school.
Absolutely.
Put it in place. Something's going to happen. Now it's no big deal if you strike out. I mean, the major leagues, I mean, there was a game this year, I know it went extra innings, there was like 28 strikeouts in a game, and it's no big, we hit a 2-run homer, we struck out 4 times, the other 4 times, you know? And it's trickling down. I know it's at the high school level, we saw it, you know, the amount of strikeouts that young people are going through. Probably not at the college level that much yet, but it's getting there. But they said that there was a stat, AAA baseball, which finishes a little bit earlier than major leagues, their home runs were up 55%.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's
55.
astounding.
So now think, how are we teaching these kids now? Going to hit a home run?
Right?
Do they really understand what exit velocity is?
No.
No, they don't.
No.
But they're going to hear it. What's my exit velocity,
Yeah.
coach?
And things like that get put on websites, and then you can email that or text that to your parents, and their parents send it to the friends, and all that becomes such a conversation over one number. And exit velocity, you know, it's nice that you might have 100-mile-an-hour exit velocity as a high school or college player. That would be significant. But if it's straight up, it's a pop-up to the catcher.
Right.
And all those things, you know, the old school way was, boy, you know, a player I played with in minor leagues and in major leagues, Paul O'Neill, he hit the ball so hard all the time. They said he makes good contact. Yeah. Either the other team makes the play or they don't, but the Reds knew that Paul O'Neill was going to be able to continue to rise through the minor league organization. Nobody was measuring how hard he hit the ball, but they knew he made good hard contact. It's nice to quantify it, but you can't play towards it. It's something that you only measure after the fact.
Right. My big thing when I was teaching hitting in high school was quality at bats. Okay? Did you hit the ball hard? Sometimes you're going to hit it hard. They're going to hit right at somebody, or somebody's going to make a great play. Did you work the count? Okay? If you're the leadoff batter of the inning, did you get 7 or 8 pitches, which is great, but again, that's forgotten now because of the home run.
And on the flip side of that thought of making a pitcher throw more pitches, now there's a pitch count. You
Right.
want to get their starting pitcher out of the game, make him throw maximum amount of pitches every inning.
Right.
They're going to be out of there in the fifth as opposed to getting into the seventh, and then you bring in someone that's probably not as good as that starter, especially at the high school level.
Right, and that's my next topic. We're going to go to the pitching, which you're an expert on. Again, in coaching high school, you should look at the teams that you're playing and say, well, this guy can't pitch today. This guy is only a certain amount of pitches. Who did we have after that? Can we get to that third pitcher? We got to get the first one out. Like you say, you got to play the pitch count a little bit because now it's part of the game, and it's strictly enforced now by the FHSAA. Hopefully, to me, I would like to see the umpires enforce it. Because you're going to have coaches say one thing, the other coach say something else. But let's go back to the pitch count. Why is it important?
It's important because coaches will abuse pitchers.
Okay.
That's always been that way. So this is a matter of taking that control out of the coach's hands and putting it, let's say, really technically at this point it's in the scorekeeper's hands, but like you said, it should be in the hands of the umpire. There should be a pitch count every inning, and the umpire marks it just on his roster, on his lineup card, like he does every substitution. And the umpire can enforce it. It gets sent back to the FHSAA in this state, and that's what you live and die with. The pitch count on the pitching side is important because you can throw too much. And of course, we all know if you throw 105 pitches in a game, there are 7 or 8 warm-ups before every inning, 25 to 40 warm-ups before the game. It ends up being a lot of throws. And rest matters. But it's not only the rest after your game, it's the rest before your appearance. And those things, they get monitored, on our staff because we pay attention to it, know it matters. But it's not being done across the board, and that is critical. That health and well-being of the athletes is very critical.
Well, you have seen so many pitchers hurt their arms. I mean, in Major League, how many pitchers have gone on the disabled list? And I think one of the reasons, when they were young, and again, we have talked about this before, is that when I was coaching back down in Miami, my guys we played our season. We played in the summer because American Legion was very big. In the fall, do something else.
Yes.
Do something else. Football, swimming, cross country, basketball. Do something else so you're not using the same muscles over and over again.
Yep, that repetitive cycle.
Right.
Yep.
And we had Rick Ankiel on the show, our pitcher from Port St. Lucie who played for the Cardinals. And Rick said the same thing. Play something else. Now, people are being specialized. I'm going to be a pitcher. And a lot of times, you finish your high school season, you're going right into travel ball, which there's 10,000 leagues. Not that I'm complaining about the travel ball, but you got to work in conjunction with your high school team. When we were down in Miami, and Legion ball was very big, I know when you were at Columbus and I was at Pace, first thing, the Legion coach would come to the high school coach and you'd work out things. This guy just pitched a certain amount of innings. Now, again, I think the pitch count itself is not the overriding factor. It's when you're pitching, how often you're pitching, and are you getting any rest, right?
Yes, and baseball in Florida, spring and summer.
Right.
But now it's in the fall, and now with travel tournaments and such and showcases, these kids are being asked to be at peak performance in November and December when January is right around the corner and the high school season starts again. There really is a very limited off time, and sometimes you just need to put that sport away, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, tennis, just put it down to let your body rest, but let your mind rest to it also.
Let kids be kids.
Exactly.
Like I said, I always love my kids playing something else. I think it's a good experience. Go to a different coach too. It's good. So when you would come that first day of practice in January, boy, you'd be so excited. Like, geez, I just finished fall ball, or I just finished this travel ball. I know when I was athletic director at Centennial and also in Miami, Soccer's really tough because they're going to all these club teams during your season in soccer. And especially because soccer season is over the holidays, over through Thanksgiving, through Christmas. Well, you got your club teams that are traveling all over the place, going at the same time. And, you know, usually in the high school season, in most cases, you don't play during Christmas break. What the kids are doing? They're playing on the travel team, traveling around. I mean, there's got to be some kind of, you know, way of controlling that. You know, football, lucky. There's really not a travel football teams are controlled yet. Even though the football season, as you and I said, that's kind of long.
I mean, there's kids now between the preseason game and the regular season games, and if they get deep in the playoffs, they're playing over a dozen games. That's a lot for these young players, no question.
If you go to the state championship in Florida and you played a preseason game and you went all the way to the state finals playing 16 games, it's a professional schedule.
That's an NFL schedule.
And then they're letting the best teams play against other states after the state tournament is over. One more game. That's a long time, you know, and it's taken away from the other sports there. All right, so now let's talk about professional baseball now, okay? Give me your predictions. We're at September, what's it, 19th?
Yeah.
All right, give me your predictions for the playoffs here.
I think something that matches up with some of our discussions through last spring when professional spring training was started at the beginning of the season. You know, it's strikeouts versus productive outs, and the consistency of a team that can have productive outs through their lineup. So, in the American League, that classic matchup is going to be the Astros versus the Yankees.
So we're talking pitching, even though the Astros can hit, versus home run hitting.
Right.
And Aaron Boone has done a fantastic job. You know, he was like a hospital ward over there. You know, I never
20 plus guys on the IL this year.
And it's, you know, who knows? Now, when they all come back, his biggest problem is who do we keep? But then again, you know, and then we're looking at the Astros and the Yankees made it there. We still don't know. It's a big advantage playing in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, there's a little home field,
there's a home field
favorite there, and that's something that you at this level, no professional player should be intimidated by this venue or that venue. You just go in and play. I played on some teams where some guys they didn't like to go to Oakland, and you know, but to me it wasn't Oakland Alameda County Stadium,
which is a football stadium, right?
Right, also. But it was the quality of the team that Tony La Russa was putting on the field. That's who you had to battle. You shouldn't have to battle the environment because both teams are in the same environment. You know, in Fenway Park, you know, teams would come in there and try to do something extra because that Green Monster was so close. But, you know, in the years I was there, I probably saw more home runs taken away by line drives as opposed to fly balls that would go out of another park.
What was the most intimidating place that you played at?
The most intimidating place, wow, it's, you know, I never saw it as intimidating. You know, I saw it, you know, for example, in Old Tiger Stadium, it was easier to hit a home run in the upper deck than the lower deck because it overhung out over the warning track. But my concentration was between the mound and home plate.
Wow, that's why you were successful.
There were nothing. I never felt like that mattered. You know, sometimes you know, hitter would come up and you know, for example, like you earlier were talking about strikeouts versus putting the ball in play. The player that I faced the most in my career was Tony Gwynn. You know, that's one of those guys that I had to face all the time, and
that's because lefty on lefty,
lefty on
lefty,
right? And I faced him 28 times. I feel fortunate that I was able to keep him under his lifetime batting average when I faced him. But in those 28 times, I never threw a pitch that he swung and missed. And I threw 95 miles an hour. I had a good slider. He always put the ball in play, or he was able to foul it off. So those guys, you couldn't beat them easily, and you know, it was a great matchup. So it wasn't about intimidation, but you had to be prepared for what that battle was going to be.
Do we have, I know we don't have a caliber of Tony Gwynn playing now, but do we have any hitters now that try to copy Tony Winstein?
You know, that's really tough. I mean, you know, when I went from the National League to the American League,
Okay.
there was a player that I didn't have to face because he was on my team in Wade Boggs. But I got to watch him prepare every day.
Tell that story.
And it was like a show every day during batting practice. And his first round, he would hit the ball nothing but the left field. And the next round, he would hit the ball up the middle. And the third round, he'd let's say, let himself pull the ball a little bit. And any rounds he would take after that, he would practice foul balls.
See, that's amazing. I was trying to tell some of our players this year to practice hitting foul balls, and they're looking at me like I'm nuts.
Right.
Why do you practice that?
As Wade would put it, when that pitcher makes that amazing pitch that you know you can't square up, whether it's right at the knees or on the outside corner, his word was, I would just flick it foul. He said, I would just try to flick it.
great.
When he learned that word, you know, sort of as his verb, he would just flick it and just make a little contact and it goes foul, and then, you know, you get to live for another pitch. But if you try to do too much with that, you know, hitting a six-hopper to second base isn't productive. And he learned, I mean, just through a lot of hard work, and it was like watching a master craftsman every day in batting practice. So it was really a joy to watch.
What was it like playing for Pete Rose?
Pete was awesome. Pete was so intense all the time. Everybody was on attention when Pete was around. And as a relief pitcher, you know, he would bring me in a game, and you know, the tying runs at third and less than 2 outs, and you know, Darryl Strawberry would be up, and he's like, Murph, you cannot let the ball get out of the infield. And I'm like, yes, sir. And then, you know, here we go. And that's, you know, as opposed to, you know, I had other managers that would just sort of flip you the ball and say, let's see what you can do. Where Pete's intensity, I absorbed that and loved it.
And his knowledge of the game was second to none.
You could learn more about baseball than you ever thought was out there just by sitting next to him in the dugout, not even conversing with him, but just listening to him talk to other people. It was great all the time.
Yeah, that must have been great an experience on that.
Yeah.
All right, we got just a minute left. All right, so give me your predictions now. Okay, American League, you going with the Astros or the Yankees?
2 years ago, I went with the Astros. They seem to be sort of the same club still. They really have the organization's done a great job. I think they'll match up with the Yankees, not taking anything away from, you know, the Twins, who've had a great year under Rocco Baldelli. I mean, it's been good. So I would lean to the favorite there with the Astros. In the National League, how do you deny the Dodgers? I mean, they've run rampant over the National League West for years now, and they shouldn't be any weaker going into it. And in that matchup, well, last year in the matchup with the Red Sox and the Dodgers, you know, I went for the Red Sox,
I know
as you
you
know,
did, and you went to the games.
I went to the first couple games, so it was great. But so I'll take Astros over the Dodgers.
Well, I'd like to see the Astros because they have a hometown young man, Michael Brantley, who played at Fort Pierce Central.
Yes.
Great kid, great father and everything, you know, who worked with us. You know, Mickey was a great teacher of hitting.
Right.
Well, listen, our time is up. I want to thank you very much for coming on in the summer and be my guest here. And here's another edition of Hey Coach.